Okay, cool. Got a notification now. All right, hello and welcome to the Lost Confederacy channel. This is week 13 of the 13-week fiscal program of recovery for American prisoners of war. Today I have myself, Chief Biko, as well as Chief Alligator and Chief Quietwater. And here, as always, we focus more so on that first letter in the acronym APOW, which is American. Today, we will go ahead and start off with the American inventor, and then we'll jump into the readings and videos for today.
Okay, you want to do the inventor now?
Yeah. And we just flow straight into it.
On the screen, let me see. I'll give it 1 second. Is it this one? Okay. All right. Today's inventor is going to be, let me move this out of the way. All right. Today's inventor is going to be Henry A. Bowman. He invented the method of making flags. His federal patent number is 469395, February 23rd, 1892. He's from Worcester, Massachusetts. And Henry Bowman's goal was to afford a practical and efficient mode of affixing the emblems or stars upon the field fabric of flags, regardless of size, and to create a mode by which the time, labor, and expense of manufacture are greatly reduced. So we can see here, make this a little bit larger. So basically what he's doing per the instructions on his invention is he would draw the star first, and then in figure 2, he would stitch it. But the way he would stitch it is it would automatically show up on the other side of the flag as well, so that the stars would be even no matter what side of the flag you're looking at. Everything was going to be in order. And then I'm going to click on his second image for the invention, where he's showing how those stars will be perfectly in order on both sides of the flag. And then he even came up with this symbol as well as an invention. So he sped up the process for people making flags. He created a cost-efficient way for flags to be made and for them to be even on both sides of the flag. That's today's American inventor. As far as I know, his family nor this group of people do not receive a percentage of income from this invention.
Great inventor for this week. Definitely a good one. Next, we'll go ahead and have Chief Quietwater with this week's Dr. Woodson quote. I'll go ahead and share my screen and just let me know which one you want to do for this week.
I'm going to do number 1. Okay, philosophers have long conceded, however, that every man has 2 educators, that which is given him, and the other that which he gives himself. Of the 2 kinds, the latter is by far more desirable. I just think that's something that we just have to continue to remind ourselves, that we can't continue to just be fed information and given information without us actually reading and self-educating ourselves with finding the information that we need to move us and push us forward as a people. So I think this one is important and should be drilled in, and we all need to just be on the same page with that, is that we have to continue to educate ourselves and not just be given information and their education and indoctrination.
Definitely agree on that. Definitely agree on that. Find out this information for ourselves. Don't even take what we're giving you on this channel as, you know, the 100%, you know, read the documents for yourself. That's definitely why we always provide those documents whenever we're doing these readings. That way you all can go through in your own time and cite to these actual resources and cite to these documents yourself. So definitely a good quote, especially to jump off into the readings for today. Lastly, we'll go ahead and read off the legal definitions and maroon historical points. Number one, American is indigenous to America. Number two, descendants, one who follows in the bloodline of an ancestor, either lineally or collaterally. Number three, slavery, a situation in which one person has absolute power over the life, fortune, and liberty of another. Number four, prisoner of war, a person, usually a soldier, who is captured by or surrenders to the enemy in wartime. Number five, school, any institution at which instruction is given in a particular discipline. Number six, education, an enlightening experience. And number seven, recovery, a return to a normal state of health, mind, or strength, the action or process of regaining possession of something stolen or lost. And last but not least, the five maroon historical points. Number one was a person escaping slavery, seeking freedom, or breaking the law. Number two, providing unity and a strong defense came first. Number three, leaders were first and foremost military figures. Number four, Maroons established guerrilla warfare, planting sharp sticks in thick grass. And number five, Maroons knew their European enemies' language, defenses, and plans. And those are our Maroon historical points. And just as we started off last week, we're going to jump into this video here of Lyndon B. Johnson signing this 1968 Civil Rights Act, also known as Indian Rights Act, which we'll be getting into today. But again, as we always explain, definitely want to pay attention to what is being said, how it is being promoted. Again, being promoted to or for the Negro in regards to not only the 68 Civil Rights Act, but also the 64, as well as the 65, which we also just got through reading. So again, for everybody in the chat, for the viewer, definitely pay attention to the language used, the verbiage, how he again makes this seem like this is all for the Negro. But again, as we read these documents, that's exactly what we're looking for. Actual concrete evidence, a concrete wording showing Negro within these documents. Because again, we have not seen anything that is specific to our group of people.
Even while President Johnson talked to Chancellor Klaus about America's responsibility in a time of crisis and challenge, word came from Capitol Hill that Congress had passed and sent to the White House the Civil Rights Act of 1968. Included in the measure was a landmark open housing bill, which, when fully effective, would forbid discrimination in approximately 80% of all housing offered for rent or for sale in the United States.
I do not exaggerate when I say that the proudest moments of my presidency have been times such as this, when I have signed into law the promises of a century. I shall never forget that it is more than 100 years ago when Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. But it was a proclamation. It was not a fact. And in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, we affirmed through law that men equal under God are also equal when they seek a job, when they go to get a meal in a restaurant, or when they seek lodging for the night in any state in the Union. And now the Negro families no longer suffer the humiliation of being turned away because of their race. In the Civil Rights Act of 1965, we affirmed through law for every citizen in this land the most basic right of democracy, the right of a citizen to vote in an election in his country. In the 5 states where the act had its greater impact, Negro voter registration has already more than doubled. Now with this bill, the voice of justice speaks again. It proclaims that fair housing for all human beings who live in this country is now a part of the American way of life. We all know that the roots of injustice run deep, but violence cannot redress a solitary wrong or remedy a single unfairness. And we just must put our shoulders together and put a stop to both. The time is here. Action must be now.
All right. So again, we have to kind of go back and walk through this timeline of remembering what exactly was taking place during this time, of course, during the 60s, late 50s into the 60s, to even set up these civil rights that we know today. So again, we go back to the early 60s. If we're going, walk through this timeline of, intense military occupation, that was what the 1964 Act was all about. Just easing up on, again, this intense military occupation, okay, allowing the Negro to go to school with the quote unquote white people, allowing the Negro to have access to public accommodations, allowing them to be able to eat at certain restaurants, things like this, without that being deemed unlawful, or without them breaking the law for these type of actions. Then we go ahead and jump into, as he stated here, this 1965 voting rights. And again, how he specifically stated now the Negro voter registration has increased within 5 states. But again, when we read that document, there was nothing specific to the Negro yet. During these proclamations, during these announcements, whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing. They'll highlight one group of people, our group, as if, again, it was specifically for our group. But again, we know that this is for the world. This is for the world to benefit off of, and we just, again, got this through default. Since everybody can get it, now the Negro can, but again, within these speeches, they like to highlight the Negro instead of highlight who it's actually for, which is everybody, benefiting everybody, yet the Negro was the one that was being intensely occupied on our own land. So again, as we just walk through this timeline, beginning July 2nd, 1964, again, military occupation, very intense military occupation at that. We jump to February 21st, 1965. That's the day Malcolm X was murdered. Then we jump into a month later, March 1965. That's when you get this bloody Sunday within Selma. So again, a month later after Malcolm X was murdered, now you have Bloody Sunday in Selma. A few months later, August, now you have the Voting Rights Act. So before we jump into this 1968 one, there was also another murder or assassination, if you want to call it, and that was of Dr. King. So his happened in April 4th, 1968. And now we have this 1968 Civil Rights Act, also known as the Indian Rights Act, coming April 11th, a week later in 1968 of that same year. So again, if we're keeping track of this timeline, keeping track of the violence that's occurred on this land to our group of people, and again, how they're specifying our group, yet they're not specifying our group within these documents, starts to make things kind of click for you and start to understand, okay, so why are they promoting this as if these rights were specifically for our group, when that's not the case? And again, we're seeing it even to this day that everybody benefits from the Civil Rights Act, but us, it seems like. So I'll let you all kind of build on that before we jump into these readings for today, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think those dates are definitely very important for us to follow, you know, because it was really just right in our face how everything just proceeded to happen. The fact that just 1 week after, 1 week before, well, 1 week after Martin Luther King was assassinated by the government, then here's this Indian Rights Act. So these dates are definitely key to us kind of knowing how things just kind of proceeded, and totally just neglected to mention anything about us specifically.
Yep, I agree. It's we just weren't taught this in school. That's number one why we're doing this. I didn't learn anything about this. The only thing I really learned was a couple of images about the dogs being sicked on in the 60s, Rosa Parks. You know, they nitpick around what really happened. But when we look at that timeline and understand that that video that you're continuing to show is 7 days after the government killed Martin Luther King. So in practicality, this was to stop riots. So we've all heard of the 1968 riots, the 1964 riots, the 1965 riots. Our people were rioting and burning down cities as they killed Malcolm X, you know, as they killed King, right? Then you got this Vietnam War going on where you drafting our parents and our uncles and our cousins, sending them across to Asia to go fight the enemy when you're fighting on your own homeland. So just being able to be specific and really drill down to what happened, because the elders don't like talking about this. And that's pretty much why Generation X, that comes right behind the 60s, the people born in the 70s, that's why we're kind of all over the place, because we're not grounded in what happened. So we're just trying to just ground the reality of what happened. This government was constantly warring against this group of people in the 60s. And hopefully by today, when we get into the beginning of this Indian Rights Act of 1968, we all can intellectually agree, do away with the word Black, Negro, colored. Afro-American wasn't even a thing at this point. That doesn't come in until the 90s. But we need to throw away the words Negro, Black, and colored, because after tonight, it's not in law.
Absolutely. Great point. Great point. And that's going to just segue us into this 1968 Civil Rights Act, also known as the Indian Rights Act. But
Hit that map first, Chief Biko.
Got you. But definitely, before we get into it again, just remembering what was stated within that video of how he pointed out, and again, this goes back to both Chief Quietwater as well as Chief Alligator's point, they'll nitpick certain things in history. So he immediately addressed the Fair Housing Act, which we'll see within this document. But before we even get to the Fair Housing Act, we're going to see the rights for Indians. So that wasn't mentioned within that statement or that proclamation that we just saw within that video for Lyndon B. Johnson. So I definitely wanted to make sure we highlight that. But this here is the American Removal Act map, pretty much showing again all of the different nations within the Creek Confederacy, also known as the Muskogee Confederacy, and how they removed again west of the Mississippi into this Indian territory. And this is in 1830. So again, all of these nations that are now quote unquote nations within Oklahoma, and you'll see that their establishment dates are way after this 1830 date, but all of them came from, again, these areas within the Southeast United States, also known as the Creek Confederacy. So this is very important as we read this document, because again, what we're trying to do is do these Indian rights that we're going to read within this 1968 document, do they apply to our group of people? And if so, that should pretty much, again, just be the nail in the coffin. At this point, it should be multiple nails within this coffin, but again, just drive home the point that we are the Americans, we are these people that they had reclassified as, you know, reclassified from American Indian, Negro, color, et cetera, et cetera. Do you want to kind of build off of that, Chief Alligator, with the map?
Yeah, I'm sure Chief Cardwater does as well. We got to be careful with our words. We didn't have nations. We had tribes and territory and confederacies. When you say nation, you're talking about corporate fictions that the United States government creates in order for them to communicate with each other via paperwork. United States government would be a nation. These 5 civilized tribes, which they're calling nations, that they're putting in Oklahoma, nations can only communicate with nations via documentation. The reason why this is important when you're doing your family genealogy, if your bloodline comes from the South, your bloodline may be on a Dawes roll. There's 2 Dawes rolls. There's one for Oklahoma and there's one for the East. So that's critical when you're going back because your family may be on a Dawes roll. What is the Dawes roll? That didn't come up to the late 1800s, but it's a military record. So all these different arrows that you're seeing of the Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, Seminole, and Choctaw, you have to understand those tribes are originally from east of the Mississippi River. Everybody in Oklahoma right now that's claiming those tribes, they're not the original people. If your bloodline goes back east of the Mississippi River and you can trace it back to who you descend from, that we are the original people. Some of those people in Oklahoma are derivatives of us, but they also started adopting Europeans, people from African descent into these tribes through the 1866 Indian treaties. So this Indian Removal Act, through school, we're taught it didn't apply to us. It does apply to us. You don't get Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street without moving the original people who had towns east of the Mississippi into what we know now as Oklahoma. Make it make sense. We don't have to trick you. This is not hocus pocus. People who were used to running things east of the Mississippi were forced via military west. And so naturally, they're going to build like they had east of the Mississippi. The problem is you got people in Oklahoma right now that are adopted into what we originally descend from, and they're acting as if they're us. But there's no record of them. There's no record of the Asian Mongoloid running towns, creating anything. That's where their lies are going to catch up with them. So I want to stress that. And I also want to add in shout out to the people in New Orleans, because you can see that red line from Tampa to New Orleans. There's a direct link between Florida and New Orleans. Check your second line. When people celebrate the second line, which was going on about 2 weeks ago, they're honoring a lot of the chiefs that came from Florida during the Seminole Wars. Do your research on that. Chief Quietwater, you want to build on that?
I think the key point for us to just realize is, like you said, we had things going on. We were prestigious. We were creating things. We ran things. And so it shouldn't be hard for us to understand that they basically just stole everything from us. So like you said, the Tulsa, Oklahomas, the way business was ran and things like that, it was us who created it. And it just got infiltrated. So I think, again, it goes back to us understanding and knowing who we are, where we come from, for the whole picture to make sense. It shouldn't be that hard for it to just click at some point and for us to wake up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and jump into this 1960 Civil Rights Act. Share my screen. Is that clear for everybody?
Yeah.
Perfect. Matter of fact, let me go to this one. This one. All right, cool. All right, I'll go ahead and start off the readings. Civil Rights Act 1968, Public Law 90-284, 82 Stat 73, as amended through PL 117-103, enacted March 15th, 2022. Currency. This publication is a compilation of the text of Public Law 90-284. It was last amended by the public law listed in the as amended through note above and below at the bottom of each page of the PDF version and reflects current law through the date of the enactment of the public law listed. Let me see. Note, while this publication does not represent an official version of any federal statute, substantial efforts have been made to enforce the accuracy of its contents. The official versions of federal laws found in the United States statutes at large and in the United States Code. The legal effect to be given to the statutes at large in the United States Code is established by Statute 1 U.S.C. 112 and 204. And this here is an act to prescribe penalties for certain acts of violence or intimidation and for other purposes, being enacted by the Senate and House Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that this act may be cited as the Civil Rights Act of 1968. So we have Title I here, interference with federally protected activities, Section 101, amends Chapter 12, Civil Rights, Title 18, United States Code, by inserting at the end thereof a new section 245 relating to federally protected civil rights activities. Nothing contained in this section shall apply to or affect activities under Title 8 of this Act. The provisions of this section shall not apply to acts or omissions on the part of law enforcement officers, members of the National Guard, as defined in Section 1019 of Title 10, United States Code, members of the organized militia of any state or the District of Columbia not covered by such Section 1019, or members of the armed forces of the United States who are engaged in suppressing a riot or civil disturbance or restoring law and order during a riot or civil disturbance. I definitely want to pause there because that's very important. It's basically saying that these provisions that are going to be read within this title do not include, or these select few groups don't have to abide by what's going to be pretty much laid out within this title. And that would be that National Guard, any of your law enforcement, as well as the militia, as you can see here, of any state or the District of Columbia, as well as the armed forces. So now whenever you see things like 2020 happen, and then again, you get that National Guard coming out, you get militias, law enforcement, now that makes sense. And it's all stated here within the first pretty much 2 paragraphs of this Title I.
So what's that really saying? Just coming straight up the middle.
Military occupation.
Yeah, the military occupation will not be ceased due to this act, and also Title 8. Title 8 is the Fair Housing Act. So when you read subsection B, nothing contained in this section shall apply to or affect activities under Title 8. So nothing in this act has nothing to do with the housing, the fair housing. That's what Title 8 is going to be under here. So those are 2 key things. The military, the militia, National Guard, any enforcement agency, DEA, FBI, CIA, they ain't studying this shit. You follow me?
Great point. Great point. Anything you picked out, Chief Quietwater?
It's pretty simple. I agree with everything, yeah.
Okay, excellent. I'll continue here. Section 102 amends the analysis of Chapter 13 of Title 18 of the United States Code by adding at the end thereof an item for the catch line of Section 245 added by Section A. Section 103 amends Section 241 of Title 18 United States Code. B amends 242 of Title 18 United States Code. And C amends Section 12 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Section 104 amends Title 18 of the United States Code by inserting immediately after Chapter 101 a new Chapter 102, which is basically going to talk about riots, it looks like here.
Right, but hold on, because at the bottom of each page, it's going to show when it was amended. That was just last year. For the people that's viewing, they recently amended this act to add riots. So not only are we ignorant to what the 1968 Civil Rights Act 64 and 65 really pertain to when it pertains to our group, We're not even realizing that they're still making changes to it just as recent as a year ago, last year.
And this
So
was probably sparked from 2020, right?
Correct.
Yep. So this is why we're losing as a group of people. An uninformed group of people just don't know what's going on. So that's why knowing is half the battle. And that's why doing it the way we're doing it, just staying in chronological order from a timeline perspective and reading these documents for ourselves, because the way that we've been learning through TV and through school, it doesn't work. Because we thinking that we're claiming to be something that's not in writing, Negro, Black, and colored, or Afro-American. It's not historical in their records. So we have to be imbeciles at law to be running around, getting in front of TV, talking about we Black. Afro-American, just that simple. This ain't hard. It's on you.
Kind of just to make it all come together too, they added it to this act in particular. Again, which we'll step into in Title II, is going to show Indian rights, but again, they're adding it to this 1968 one. So again, just standing on the edge of the coin, do these acts apply to us? And if so, who are we really within these acts? Because again, stated, we're not Negro, we're not colored, we're not Black. We're not seeing any of those reclassifications within these documents. So there's definitely something to very important to be looking out for. So let's jump in here.
Before you jump in, hold on. Before you jump in, anybody who watches this video or people who are in the chat, why have you never seen an act that's titled Rights of Colored, Rights of Negro, or Rights of Black? We're looking at Title II of this act, and it's specific to rights of Indians. This is why we're saying stop using the word Black, Negro, colored, or Afro-American. You're never going to see something that Congress wrote that says rights of Blacks. It's just that simple. They can be specific. They're being specific to not be specific in writing with us for a reason. Y'all want to build on that before you take off? They're going to give the definition of what an Indian is. They've never given you the definition of what a Negro is. They've never gave you a definition of what Black is. They've never gave you definition of what colored is or Afro-American in any lawful document that comes out of their Congress. Y'all want to build on that? This shit ain't hard.
Go ahead, Chief Whitewater.
I think it's important. I mean, this will actually be my first time reading it thoroughly as well. It was brought to my attention a couple of months ago, but just going in depth with it, it's important for us to know, yeah, we have not up to this point seen Black, Negro, colored in any documentation. And now they're about to break it down. So I just think that it's important for us to know. We have to know these things, and we have to continue educating ourselves.
No, I definitely agree with both of y'all. Funny, I was having a conversation with my mom, and she was like, yeah, her grandmother was saying, yeah, we're Indian and such. So not Native American, not African American, not Black, not Negro. She used the specific word that is in this document, and that was Indian. So even that in itself, which I'm pretty sure a lot of people in the chat, hell, you can put up a feather if your grandparents or your mother or somebody said the same thing. Yeah, we're Indian and whatever else they may have said.
And I think we've just used that so loosely. You know, we got Indian in our family, but we really do. I mean, we are, you know what I'm saying? I mean, we've used that so loosely, so it was known, but I don't think that people knew how deep this went in regards to how they just X'd us out by putting those titles on us, like Black, Negro, and colored.
Correct. So great point. I'll jump into it. So Title II, Rights of Indians, definitions. So we got Section 201. For purposes of this title, the term Indian tribe means any tribe, band, or other group of Indians subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and recognized as possessing powers of self-government. Definition number 2, powers of self-government means and includes all governmental powers possessed by an Indian tribe, executive, legislative, and judicial, and all offices, bodies, and tribunals by and through which They are executed, including courts of Indian offenses, and means the inherent power of Indian tribes hereby recognized and affirmed to exercise criminal jurisdiction over all Indians. Definition number 3, Indian court means any Indian tribal court or court of Indian offenses. And number 4, Indian is defined as any person who would be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States as an Indian under Section 1153, Title 18, United States Code, if that person were to commit an offense listed in that section in Indian country to which that section applies.
All right, stop right there, go back up to definitions. Definitely got to build on this. Number 1, the definition, Indian tribe. Indian tribe means tribe, band, or other group of Indians subject to jurisdiction of the United States. What tribes would be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States? We got to go back to the 1830 Indian Removal Act. See why that's important, y'all? So in 1968, let me ask the question to people who may be viewing this for the first time. Did we have courts where we would try our own people and find them guilty or innocent? That's something to ask yourself, because we're reading something that took place in 1968. What was the position of our people in 1968? Did we have our own tribunal court system? I'm going to say no. We were in no man's land. Why are we in no man's land? Because they moved people militarily from the 1830s all the way throughout the unlawful Seminole Wars and the fake Civil Rebellion. Those that did not go into Oklahoma, you're just left, you're Negro. You're not, you denationalized. You didn't have courts in 1968 to try your own people. You were brought into a foreign court.
Okay, got you. Right.
You see what I'm saying? So your jury of peers was a group of Europeans, and they could drag you out in the middle of downtown and lynch you. So we got to look at where we got to think back. Even though I wasn't born then, nobody on this channel was born then. What was going on in 1968 with our people? Did we have any structure? Did we have our own government? So that's the price that we're paying. That's the price that we're paying because the United States government had been sneak attacking us throughout the 1800s without declaring war. That's why we're focusing on their Congress never declared war against us, but they were voting to remove people, waging war. And so the towns that were lost, the economics that were stolen, all of that was unlawful. So now here we are over 130 years later, from 1830 to 1968. We don't have a structure when this is written.
Basically, their system was created and moving like a well-oiled machine, and we were just there, just trying to insert our way into their system from then until now. And their system has been working exactly how they need it to work in their favor.
Yep. So in 1968, you got some of us saying, okay, intense military occupation is over in 64. Okay, 1965, we think we can vote and be a part of the U.S. government, but you're willfully dishonoring your bloodline because your grandma in the 1960s, who was still alive, you knew she was whatever Indian tribe that she descended from. So it was really the youth of that time, the kids that were in college, they're coming up with these organizations that's taking us off the land. Black Panthers, that was a political organization, but you're calling it Black. Then you got MLK being killed. He's a Christian, that's religion. That's got nothing to do with your family tree. Everybody on your family tree could have different belief systems. So you see how they got us through media, where you can go Black Panther, which is political party. You could be Christian, rocking with MLK, but that's not your bloodline. Or you could be Nation of Islam, which was Malcolm X, still not your bloodline. So either way, they got you off the land, closing out the 1960s. Anything else y'all want to build on this? Just looking at these definitions. We didn't have our own tribunal courts. To this day, we don't have our own structures to communicate with this government, which is what we're saying. Organizations is small talk. The best we do is organize. NAACP is an organization. A church is an organization. We got to think government. Y'all want to build on that?
I'm on the same page. I think that sums it up pretty much for me. You're unmuted, Chief Biko.
Oh, my bad. But no, I definitely agree. Because again, when have we had our own courts? When have we been able to try anybody within our own court system? Just ask yourself that. And we haven't. So I think that in itself just explains a lot into, you know, our structure, again, our organization, how far we're willing to take organizing and creating a structure for ourselves too. Again, usually in stopping at the foundation aspect. You know, we're building a Black Lives Matter organization. We're building a NAACP organization. But when it comes to actually building a government structure that's going to support an economy, things of that nature, that's where we seem to be hesitant towards as a group. So I'll continue into Indian rights. So we have section 202. In general, no Indian tribe in exercising powers of self-government shall, one, make or enforce any law prohibiting the free exercise of religion or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition for a redress or redress of grievance. So again, sounds like they are, again, coming up underneath this United States government, because this would be the same thing from your first Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, press, religion, etc. We got number 2, violate the right of people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizures, nor issue warrants, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or thing to be seized. So again, sounding like number 2 of the Bill of Rights, as far as that amendment. Number 3, subject any person for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy. Number 4, compel any person in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. Number 5, take any private property for a public use without just compensation. Number 6, deny any person in a criminal proceeding the right to a speedy and public trial, to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and at his own expense to have assistance of counsel for his defense, except as provided in section B.
Scroll back up real quick to the first one and what you just read. Section A, where it says, in general, no Indian tribe in exercising powers of self-government. That's a contradiction. If I really own and run something, nobody tells me what to do.
Correct.
So here the United States government is saying, if you're an Indian tribe and you're self-governing your tribe, they're telling you
what you can and can't do.
Correct. And they started this in 1866 with the fake Indian treaties, or I'm gonna say unlawful Indian treaties, because you moved people into Oklahoma, gave them nation status that were not the real leaders of those tribes that came from east of the Mississippi. They walked people via their military into Oklahoma, adopted European peasants, people of African descent, and other people into these new 5 civilized tribes, and then made them a subsidiary of the United States government. That's how they're able to dictate to them what you can and cannot do. We have to be able to correspond government to government with the United States government. I don't know why we can't envision ourselves of having our own legislative, judicial, and executive branches based on the way we want to run it. So the European may want to give life sentences for crimes. Imagine what it would look like if our people created our own criminal system and said, we don't believe in life imprisonment. So if you found one of our people in your jurisdiction, we need that person back to be tried by a jury of his true peers. And we'll punish them according to what we want to do. That's what we're trying to convey to people through this channel. We got to stand all the way up. You can't let these people with no money at this point. Their government is bankrupt. They never declared a head-up fight. They've been waging unlawful war on us, and then you turn around and let them dictate terms to you after they stole everything from you. Y'all want to build on that?
And then I think it's important for us to also, us putting religious leaders, athletes, entertainers as the people that actually speak for us, and the people who front like they're the ones who are supposed to get things done for us, and they literally get nothing done, like the Congressional Black Caucus. But we have to put the right people in place to make these things happen as well. So I think that's important for us to step away from, letting these preachers be the four people of our group, basically.
I definitely agree with what you said there. Yeah, stop letting them dictate who will be our quote unquote leaders. Getting back to how we actually ran things, again, going back to the maroon historical points, military figures are first and foremost our leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And as we look at any other country and how they run their countries, their governments, most of the time you're going to see a commander-in-chief or a military figure as the president. I'm not even sure what other, the dictator, whatever that highest ranking person is within that government, they're going to be a military figure.
Right.
They're going to be wearing, again, both hats on the business end as well as on the, hey, we gotta go ahead and get on the fighting end, making shit happen when it comes to actually having a war against people and things of that nature. So we have to get back in alignment with that. But this is definitely important here in regards to, again, if they are supposed to be self-governing, they have to now make sure that they don't go against their parent figure or their parent government, which will be this United States government. So again, it's highlighted here. No Indian tribe in exercising powers of self-government shall make or enforce any law prohibiting, again, the free exercise of religion, press, speech, etc. Again, so you nations here within this now Oklahoma, this state of Oklahoma in their Indian territory, you can govern it how you want, but you can't go against our Bill of Rights. Mm. So again, you can't govern it as you want because, again, now you're still subjective to a higher power, a higher authority, which again would be that United States government.
Right.
That's very key in this. I'll jump down to number 7. 7 says require excessive bail, impose excessive fines, or inflict cruel and unusual punishments. B, except as provided in subparagraph C, impose for conviction of any one offense, any penalty or punishment greater than imprisonment for a term of 1 year or a fine of 5,000 or more, 5,000 or both. C, subject a subsection B, impose for conviction of any one offense, any penalty or punishment greater than imprisonment for a term of 3 years or a fine of 15,000 or both, or impose a person in a criminal proceeding a total penalty or punishment greater than imprisonment for a term of 9 years. So 8, deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of its laws or deprive any person of liberty or property without due process of law. Number 9, pass any bill or attainder or ex post facto law. Or 10, deny to any person accused of an offense punishable by imprisonment the right upon request to a trial by jury of not less than 6 persons. We have B, offenses subject to greater than 1 year imprisonment or a fine greater than 5,000. A tribal court may subject a defendant to a term of imprisonment greater than 1 year but not to exceed 3 years for any one offense, or a fine greater than $5,000, but not exceed 15,000, or both. If the defendant is a person accused by a criminal offense who has been previously convicted of the same or a comparable offense by any jurisdiction in the United States, or is being prosecuted for an offense comparable to an offense that would be punishable by more than 1 year of imprisonment if prosecuted by the United States or any of the states. So again, just highlighting how they are not able to have sovereignty, basically, are not able to be really self-governed, because again, they can't go against any of these things already established, or in case of this last section, any offenses that have already been tried underneath the United States government, they can't, again, do double jeopardy and try them underneath their own tribal court system.
Right, but there is some benefits to this. The benefit is this is for people who grew up on reservations.
Correct, yeah.
One of the benefits of growing up on a reservation, right, which if we look at the historical reality of a reservation, that just means that at one point in time between the 1830s up until about the early 1930s, your family members were forced via military to a fort. Because when you trace those treaties back to when they were setting up Indian Territory in Oklahoma, they were putting those people on military bases and forts. That's how we get Fort Gordon and all these different treaties, right? That was military signing them. It wasn't the United States government. But the benefit of people who grew up on a reservation, if they want to try to act like they're better than those of them that really have family that go back to what we know now as Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, who look like us, they got a chance to see their peers, people who look like them, run government. And from what they're saying, those people don't even look like them. Now they're saying they're Asian Mongoloid, and they're even dealing with political racism within the reservations. But for that invisible person, that Negro, Black, or colored person, when have you ever walked into a court system that was run by you? That's what we're trying to bring to our people's attention. This is a problem. You don't run anything. So when you walk into court, it's not even tribunal court, you're walking into court with foreign law, and you're walking into a jurisdiction that's operating under common law. That's not from your ancestral lineage. And you wonder why you're the most mass incarcerated on planet Earth. So we've never seen something run by us that we answer to, and we know that those people have our best interest at heart because it's our people. I'm gonna stop right there. That's why it's time for us to stand all the way up. It's not gonna work any other kind of way. Chief Whitewater.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. For sure, I'm on the same page.
Same. Definitely piggyback off everything you just stated right there. So we have to get back to, again, running our own shit, establishing our own government. Without that, we'll end up just like this in regards to, okay, just being a subsidiary underneath this United States corporation. So I'll pick up here on rights of defendants. In a criminal proceeding in which an Indian tribe, in exercising powers of self-government, imposes a total term of imprisonment of more than 1 year on a defendant, the Indian tribe shall provide to the defendant the right to effective assistance of counsel, at least equal to that guaranteed by the United States Constitution. And 2, at the expense of the tribal government, provide an indignant defendant the assistant of a defense attorney licensed to practice law by any jurisdiction in the United States that applies appropriate professional licensing standards and effectively ensures the competence and professional responsibility of its licensed attorneys. Number 3, require that the judge presiding over the criminal proceeding, A, has sufficient legal training to prescribe or preside over criminal proceedings and is licensed to practice law by any jurisdiction in the United States. 4, prior to charging the defendant, make publicly available the criminal laws, including regulations and interpretative documents, rules of evidence, and rules of criminal procedure, including rules governing the recusal of judges in appropriate circumstances of the tribal government. I'm gonna just pause right there. But again, this is just more highlights and more clarity of how these quote unquote self-governing nations have to abide by the United States rules and regulations and even their standards when it comes to their law. They're not saying you have to be licensed in your own laws. You have to be licensed in according to United States rules, regulations, procedures. You have to be adequate for us, and that will determine if you can be an attorney for a defendant or anything like that. So again, you still have to live up to our standards underneath the United States government, not your own standards. So again, just another clear example of how they're not self-governing if they still have to abide by somebody else's, another nation at that, rules and regulations.
That makes sense to me. Can you pull up that map real quick again of the Indian Removal Act?
Yeah.
When we look at the historical record and just go down the timeline, it makes sense why they're sunning them like that or why they're playing big brother to them. I'll wait till you get that map. So basically, we can see on this map, we can see Fort Gibson, Fort Townsend, Fort Coffee, Fort Smith. So they've already got military posts set up in what was then Indian territory. It makes sense that the United States government is like, look, we're gonna escort you east of the Mississippi River, and you're gonna steal the birthright of the people that are from the southeast region of North America, east of that Mississippi River, but we got you. We're gonna protect you. Because then people gonna be hostile against you because now you're claiming to be Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, Seminole, Choctaw. You follow me? So they don't have an issue with being subservient to the United States government because they're not the original people. And how we know that is when we look at historical record, we see towns that our people operated out of. You don't see our people with teepees and tents. We invented all these industries, the railroad system, all of this stuff we invented. But it's like a cartoon. It's like Wizard of Oz. They gave a group of people our birthright. They're protecting them militarily. Meanwhile, they have to miseducate the original people on the land through school and through TV, movies, books, about fictional names that don't even exist in writing. And here we are in 2023, and we still don't get it. We still don't get that Black, Negro, and colored is nowhere in their law. Y'all want to build on that? It makes sense. Why would they go against this? Because they're reaping the benefits of something that they're not supposed to inherit. So it's almost like what they call the First World War, it really was against us. I'll stop right there.
I'm just looking at the chat and I see, I just responded to Dark Gable, the Amaru Khan, basically saying that we are the majority and most of these places just take over. Our ignorance is the only thing that's holding us back. And I definitely believe it, like I say this all the time, it is our ignorance. I really just think if we knew the majority or even a piece of some of this information, it would give us the confidence to know that, like, hey, we really did have some things going on. We really did run things, but just throughout the years and the reclassification and the narrative and the indoctrination, we were made to think like we didn't know nothing, that we were slaves and that we were just submissive to everything that was just thrown at us. So that's my thoughts on it.
Nah, I definitely agree. Combination of, lack of knowledge, lack of knowing. again, who we are, knowing this history, knowing this government's history, but also again, yeah, and with that, coming of understanding, you'll hopefully have pride in regards to who you are and where you come from, especially when it comes to this land, especially after you read the constant warring. And again, not all losses or ills in regards to our people. We fought back. We won a lot of wars, a lot of battles. But even in hearing that, say, hey, nah, we come from a fighting people, people of warriors and things of that nature. So it's definitely important. And I was just trying to look up to see where Tulsa kind of landed between these areas of where they are now classifying as the Cherokee Nation. So I definitely want to just kind of show that, because I think that'll speak a lot into what you kind of stated there too, Chief Alligator. Let me see here. So if we take a look here, we got Tulsa, Oklahoma, right there. But then as far as what it's surrounded by, Cherokee Nation, Choctaw Nation, Chickasaw, Seminole, Creek. So again, if we haven't, like you stated, these groups of people who are taking our birthright, our identity, and again, being protected. And even if we kind of jump back, you'll see like, okay, these forts are still located right on where you're seeing these different nations. And it makes sense, okay, they're gonna want to fight back for their identity. So we'll need to go ahead and make sure that we wipe out any semblance, any memory of themselves being exactly who they are. Again, the cream of the crop, people of this land, again, being able to build quote unquote Black Wall Street. Again, there was many of those, but we're going to use that for an example. Again, you didn't hear any of that coming from that Mongoloid featured quote unquote Native American. So I think that's very key as well, as we just take a look and can start to understand, okay, this all starts to align. Again, seeing these forts, same pretty much areas where I just highlighted of the present day different quote unquote 5 civilized tribe nations.
And it rhymes with history, y'all. When we look at, okay, so what happened to the people that didn't go into Indian territory? Then we'll use terms throughout history like, oh, the Great Migration, when people from the Southeast were running to the Midwest. That wasn't a great migration. That was unlawful wars against our people. They were literally running, leaving everything behind just to save their lives. That's how we end up in Detroit and Chicago. So, the people that look like us as well are not being all the way honest and forefront with what was going on. What the price that people had to pay that did not go into Indian territory. They caught hell from 1830 until 1964, when they said, okay, we will no longer intensely military occupy you. Listen to the people that are still living today from that Motown era, the Smokey Robinsons, and those people tell you that they will get shot at being in quote unquote sundown towns. Let's call that what it is. That's you walk into the wrong restaurant, don't read the sign outside that says no colors or no Negroes allowed, and they can bust you in broad daylight. So I don't know why the older generation wants to glance over what really has happened to us. And so now we've been blended into nothing because we don't want to have these reality conversations about what's happened. Now here we are under terms since 1968 that the president didn't even say at that time. Lyndon Baines Johnson called us Negro. So how you get a Black caucus 3 years later in 1971? That president didn't say Black. He said Negroes can now eat at restaurants. So 3 years later, we get Black. Then we go from Black to Afro-American in the 1990s. Now you're trying to move it to people of color. Why? What? We're being erased because we don't know who we are. And it's because we don't want to have these hard conversations. Unlawful war. We're literally I don't know how else would y'all word this? Like, to be Black, colored, or Negro and Afro-American means you're nothing under the government. I don't know how else to say it.
I would say it's simple like and just think of it as an inmate. You're no longer a name, you're a number.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You inmate 325-6.
Mhm.
They doing the same thing with us as far as like, okay, y'all whole group is now Black.
Right.
We're
Right.
gonna make it sound a little bit better for the time. We're gonna call y'all, African American. Matter of fact, we're gonna do away now. Y'all just people of color. Y'all just the Crayola box people. Like, so
Right.
they're just being able to dictate terms, again, dictate who we are as a group. And then we try to, at least a majority of our people that are still, brainwashed, will try to attach themselves somehow, some kind of way through history to say, oh yeah, we're Black because we're from this place, and that place there is no people or anything called Black, or et cetera, et cetera. So again, it's now we're in this, trying to grasp onto anything, when again, just go back and do your own genealogy, your own family lineage, and then see what the documents say in regards to that time, as far as, being able to go back as far as you can. What were you being called at that time? What were your family actually calling each other at that time?
Right.
Is it frustrating to have this kind of conversation? Do y'all get bothered internally? Like when we'll stop where we are here. We'll finish up this section, but we're showing you now that there's clear definition. The U.S. government gave a clear definition of who the Indian was. You've never seen a clear definition where Congress has voted on something about who the Negro was, or who the Black was, or who the Afro-American was. This should be the point where we get it. Like,
Right.
okay, this does not exist.
Correct.
It is frustrating. It's definitely frustrating because it really, I mean, even me on this journey of learning all of this information is not hard, and it's not hard to understand either. So it is frustrated that on the mass level that a lot more people don't know or willing to learn this information.
I definitely agree. Especially when it's like you're hammering home the same examples, and at some point, hopefully it's going to click, or that alarm is going to ring off for, the majority of our people. Not everybody on this chat, we already in tune. That's the reason why we're here, but as far as the majority of our people, it's like, okay, we show a video of Lyndon B. Johnson talking about this 1968 Civil Rights Act, mentioning Negroes. We reading the document, no Negroes in sight. Who is it specifying though? The Indians. So you can't say they can't be specific to a group when the first, I believe, 17, or not 17, but the first 7 titles are going to be specifically for the Indians, which again would be our family that split from us during this 1830s. So it's like, damn, okay, they're saying they can't be specific to our group, yet they're being specific to a group, and they're mentioning us within their propaganda, their media techniques, all these different things. But when it comes to the documents, we're nowhere to be seen. So it's like, okay, at this point, why continue to have faith in the system? Why not we just go ahead and start our own shit? This we understand this is our land, start our own government, things of that nature. And yeah, it definitely gets frustrating because it's not that hard to uncover. It's not that deep as far as the information that you have to look up.
Can you scroll back up as we close out on today's video where it says the definition of Indian? And as we read this document, we're just gonna keep coming back to this. What we're showing is, find us a document from Congress where they give rights to the Black, Negro, or colored, and list the definition of what the Black, Negro, or colored is. What we're saying is there's no document that exists that has a definition coming out of Congress from the United States government that clearly defines what Black, Negro, or colored, or Afro-American is. So we're in a war. We've been in war, and the propaganda, which is newspaper, television, they proclaim to the world one thing while waging silent war on us. I really don't know how else to put it to people. If you are over 10 years old, you can get what we're showing you on the screen. You're seeing Congress of the United States government write a clear definition of what Indian is. You will not see anything from this government talking about rights of Negroes, rights of color, rights of Black. It's time for us to stop the madness. That's my closing statement, and y'all can go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. We have to take this, and now that we're saying this and we're wrapping up this whole entire journey that we've been on, and we've been able to provide documentation throughout this whole course that we've been on. I just think that it should be easier for people to understand and to see that we have definitely been ignored, benign, neglected throughout this whole time. And this is just the nail in the coffin.
Definitely agree. Definitely agree. Yeah, folks that never went west of that Mississippi, we the Negroes. They've given our bloodline, our name, our identity to these individuals out in Oklahoma, and now they're setting up shop in regards to their rights with this document. But again, nothing specific for our group, but again, constantly being warred upon, as stated, through propaganda. They'll claim it as a war on this, a war on that, but it's really just a war against the Negro, the stubborn individuals that did not go west of the Mississippi. And it's going to be on site until we eliminate you all. That's what they're saying with our group of people. And until we actually wake up and understand that, again, like Chief Quietwater stated, understanding our history, becoming knowledgeable on this information, we'll continue to be wiped out, picked apart individually and as a group until we come to that realization that say we are these individuals. We have to retake our names back and check not only, this United States government, but also these individuals who are basically set tripping in regards to our tribal and bloodline names. It's going to have to be a lot of straightening getting done with multiple groups, but until we, again, come to this knowledge as a collective, as a majority, I mean, shoot, what we're doing, just reading documents. So again, shout out to everybody on the chat, in the chat, tapping into these channels, tapping in not only this channel, but other channels that are, dropping gems as well. Slowly but surely, we're waking up. But again, until we do this as a collective, we're going to be doing or seeing the same thing every month, every quarter, every year, till we finally realize it as a group.
Chief Quietwater, let me ask, you got, from a feminine energy standpoint, do we have a chance, like being a mother, do you think we have really getting that you're not Black, you're not colored, you're not Negro, because unfortunately your granddaddy or your uncle, whoever, was living at this time, because clearly niggas probably didn't give a fuck about this a week after King was killed. They probably tearing up cities. They could care less.
I mean, I really honestly, just speaking from just me personally, I know a lot of people who don't have their eyes open, and it's neither good nor bad, but no, I don't think that they care at this point. The people that, like you said, that just came out of the Jim Crow back then, and they were just, happy to be able to vote and all of those things. And then we have us, and we're too consumed with so many other things and distracted by so much other stuff. And then we have our kids, and our kids are very, very far removed. So it has to be us, our generation. Do I have hope, or do I think that it can change? No time soon at all. Definitely. It's just going to take too much for us to get all on code, because you have a lot of people who have the information, have the knowledge. A lot of people are doing proactive things, but we still can't come together. And stay on one path to get one thing done. So that's just my personal thought.
Damn.
Yeah.